to report is the actual call list of all the different types of calls that we go out on. And it's not necessarily the disposition. And it's different. It's been that way since the 1st of July, since we switched over to a different reporting system. We report directly to the state now through KY Ops.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have two actually. I guess Chief Foster just stepped out. But the other would be, I guess we can talk about this with the employees on Saturday and Monday, but with regard to compensation, that we just signed our wellness program with Active 24/7. However, it's my understanding that with them being 24/7, that the city employees who want to use the facility at non-attended hours also have to pay a $10 fee if they want that option, which the police have the right to use it, which I understand the money's coming through their funds and most of them have a key who do use the service. And then if we come, I know we can't really like pay people to go to the gym, but is there any way to build up time off for them to be healthier? So in longevity, you're thinking if someone's healthier, they're not going to have to pay as much for health because they're going to not be as sick. They're going to take better strides, take better care of themselves. So could they possibly build up time if they go to the gym? So maybe they took a 2-hour lunch break, 1 hour for their lunch, 1 hour for them.
I believe police and fire give time. At least I know the police department gives time.
That's something I want to talk about in the ordinance stuff, if we were allowed to bring that up. I don't know if that's something department heads can talk about.
Right.
As far as the 24/7 access, the clause in the contract that they insisted on having was that they felt like it brought value to them for law enforcement people to be on their premises outside of when they were attended.
Right. Plus, if they would work a different shift.
I think their perspective was it brought value because they felt like it brought security to the facility. If they had policemen, just law enforcement people in there in the middle of the night, they might have less vandalism or less likelihood.
Plus funding comes through their account. Fire, police, fire units and police pay 1/3 and the other third comes from.
That's true, but they insisted. They basically just said we want a clause in the contract that says that any city employee that wants access outside of our normal hours pays the same fee as any other member of the gym, except for law enforcement staff. And law enforcement staff, they were willing to make the exemption for it because they felt like it brought them value. So they asked us to put that clause in their contract, and we agreed to it.
They told me that was your idea, that you didn't want to pay that, or that we as a city did not want to pay that part in order to allow all-day access.
The people at the gym asked me to include a provision in the contract that said that was only available to law enforcement people, that anybody else. Now, if the city wants to pay that fee, that's a discussion we can have, I suppose. But that was their idea to put that clause in the contract, and I suspect I've got an email.
So it wasn't our idea to not include it because we didn't want to incur the extra cost of local police, our $10 fee, which necessarily wouldn't be all employees, it would just be the ones that probably use the gym, which I don't know how many actually do. Do you have a copy of how many people actually have a membership?
There's a sign-in sheet.
It's not a sign-in sheet, they said anymore. They told me that to get a card, that they have to go through your department in order to get the card.
My department does not issue cards for the gym.
To prove that they're a city employee. And then they get the card, they no longer have the sign-in sheet.
That's the employee ID card.
So they don't get a little swipe card?
No, they just have to show their employee ID card and they get in.
Okay.
Once you do that and put your name, they have like the application form. You basically provide them with your stuff. Your city ID says, yes, I'm an employee. You fill out that, and then they give you one of their little cards so that when you walk in there and scan it, then it tracks your usage through them.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
And I might be able to ask them for some kind of report regarding usage. If they're tracking it electronically, they may be able to generate.
And then maybe we could get feedback saying, you know, maybe one of our employees were there working out, look, there's an hour of their day, which studies also shows people who do work out during the day typically feel better about themselves, have increased productivity at work, and live a healthier lifestyle, which causes less money to go toward medications, insurance costs, insurance premiums.
I agree. I think we've got to do something on the wellness front if we're going to be serious about controlling health. We had some people come in last week and show us a program that they've implemented in some agencies. So there's things out there. Their particular wellness issue is more related to in-house clinics and employers setting up in-house clinics. And
We have so much room for that.
I would agree. I think that we're going to, it's a huge component of controlling the cost. And if we're serious about controlling the cost, we've got to somehow figure out how we can get into the wellness county.
And maybe we can't just give them money, maybe just give them time off, that's always a nice option too.
I think that my concern, and I believe Chief will bring it up later maybe, and maybe not, but the concern about people being on the clock and being at the gym may raise some worker compensation questions about whether, if they get hurt during that workout, if they're on the clock, whether that's a compensable injury or not. And that's not a commentary as to whether we should or should not do it. It's just, I think, something that we need to consider.
So, and the other one was Chief Hostage, with our meeting on the 24th, I know we agreed to allow the car purchase. Was there a anyone local that you could get the car from versus someone in Lexington?
Not local under state contract.
Okay.
The only dealer for that particular type of vehicle is Bravo Chevrolet in our area.
Okay.
And then the
Is it
state.
Louisville or Lexington?
Louisville. Good.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other new business? Well, let's move on to the discussion item. Anybody who doesn't want to stick around for this is welcome to move on. I know this is a long meeting, but I think we all expected that when we decrease the frequency of our meetings, we would be increasing their length. First item up for discussion are procurement procedures.
Yes, we thought it would be beneficial to review in general, our procurement procedures, and then also any time to discuss any particular details or ask questions. So I'd ask Mr. Dawson just to give us an overview real quick, if you could, Mr. Dawson.
Okay, sure.
You want to come over here?
Yeah. Thank you, Fred.
I just jotted down some notes here, just a general overview, to get everybody on the same page. But right now, the city has a general policy that was approved by the commission in 2003, just an order. And since that time, because we changed auditors about the last several years, we've been writing procedures, the policy and procedures manual. So we have a policy and procedures manual that details our purchasing policies and how we administer that. It's backed up by that order that was passed in 2003, but just with more detail in it. And we've also let the auditor look at that. They've reviewed it, and also Rob has looked at that same policy and procedures manual to make sure that it's lining up with what the order says. Also, just a little bit about an overview on the bid packages, because that's where a lot of the money is being spent. And that's anything that's 20,000 or greater expenditure. And some of this may be just rehashed for some folks on the commission. Some people might not be aware, so I'll just kind of run through this real quick if I could. Basically, the starting point is the department manager provides the bid package specs to the purchasing agent. That's kind of the beginning point. And then the next item is the department manager sends the bid package to the city attorney for review for any contractual issues or problems that may occur. So Rob takes a look at that, and he responds back to the department manager if he sees anything that appears like it needs to be changed. And then the next item is the department manager / purchasing agent. Sometimes it varies. We'll send the bid package to the newspaper for publishing. And also, just for your note, Lynn Imaging lists the bid package online for construction projects. And normally, the timing on this is about 7 to 21 days prior to when the bid packages are due back to the city. And then all bid packages are submitted to City Hall and opened publicly. The design engineer and / department manager usually identifies the best quality bidder when the bids come back. And it's based on several criteria. That's based on the ability of the contractor to meet the design specs, pricing, experience, credit worthiness, proposed timing to complete the job, and past performance that we've seen from that contractor and other city jobs. So those are kind of the criteria that we look at to measure. And then the department manager presents their recommendations back to the commission for approval after they've selected the vendor. So that's what we do on the bid packages. I thought that might be helpful and useful to kind of start the discussion.
Do we have a link to the Lynn Imaging on our website?
Maybe Bill can answer that question.
I don't think there is.
I don't believe there is. We could probably get it, but I don't believe it's current.
Yeah, we can check that. I can check that. That's just an overview. I don't know if you want me, I don't know how you want to proceed, but I can go through some of the cost reduction measures that we've done over the past couple of years if you want me to provide any of that kind of information. I've got some of that, if that is useful, or further this discussion here.
If I may, I think there has been some interest in how the large contracts, say for the sewer department, right. You know, I think maybe some of the engineering or type professional contracts. Would you want to address that, or would Mr. Jack want to talk about that, or? Where the money is, so that's.
So you're specifically engineering contracts? Is that what you're?
Well, I think to a layperson, I mean, you work with this every day, so this is what you do. So if you could kind of explain, like
The process we walk
Yes.
through? Okay. When we procure engineering services, it's based upon qualification selection, not price. Basically, the goal is to select the best qualified engineering firm to do the work. You then negotiate a contract with them. If you cannot come to terms on a price, then you go to the second most qualified bidder, et cetera, et cetera. Typically that doesn't happen, but it has been known to happen. We initially, when we started this process, every time we had a project, we issued a request for qualifications. If we've got, let's say, 15 or 20 projects, that's 15 or 20 requests for qualifications. that the engineering firms had to submit, one for each project. It also meant that we were sometimes looking at 20, 25, 30 submittals on each project. So, I believe it was about 4 years ago, could have been 5, it was 4 or 5 years ago. We did a pre-qualification of engineering firms, and basically we issued a request for qualification. We identified 12 areas that we typically hired people for. You know, small sanitary, large sanitary, small pump station, large pump station improvements, large pump station improvements, small, et cetera, et cetera. And what we did is we then rated all the firms that we got. We kept that rating for a period of 3 years. We just did a new qualification this spring. And with the number of firms we had and the number of categories, it was essentially like reviewing 219 requests for qualifications. That's essentially what we did. It took a lot longer than we thought. But basically, what we've got is scores for all the engineering firms based upon their qualifications. When we have a project, we then, let's say it's something at the treatment plant, I pull the list, look at all the firms that have pre-qualified at the treatment plant. I look at the project we're doing. Let's say it's an electrical modification. Then I'll take that list and look at all those folks and figure who have electrical experience versus mechanical experience versus civil experience. We make that selection, we then interview them, and then we make our selection based upon the interviews. And again, at that point, we go through the negotiation of fees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
That's my question. Maybe Mr. Dawson, you explained it and I missed it. Is there any emphasis put on local companies as they do this process at all?
It depends on the project. Frankly, for the small projects, we try to use the local firms as much as we can. On the larger projects, no, we do not. We look, I mean, there's really only 2 or 3 large engineering firms that I would consider local within Frankfort. And we basically look at them at the same way we look at anyone else. Because again, our goal is to get the best firm we can, because we want to make sure it's done right, done effectively. And you know, I was in the consulting world for 27 years before I came here. And one of the things you will find is if you, and this goes back to the discussion of fees, you can select an engineering firm that charges you $200 an hour fee-wise, and it may take them 100 hours to do the work. You can find a firm who might do it for, let's say, $50 an hour, but if it takes them 250 hours to do the work, it's going to cost you more than hiring a firm that has the higher rate. And that's all of what you look for. But like I say, bottom line is we're trying to get the best firm to make sure we get the best product at the end of the day. And when we look at the projects, like I say, the small projects, definitely we look at the local firms first, frankly. We try to give all those to the smaller local firms. The larger ones, we're looking, frankly, for the best firm we can get. Sometimes they're local, sometimes they're not. I truly believe at this point we have a fair representation of local firms that are doing work for us. You talk to the local firms, they might argue that point. Probably would argue that point. But that's, you know, that's my belief at the present time. If you look at the projects we've got versus how many are local, and then define a local firm. You know, is a local firm that is here and only here, or is it a firm that has a office in Louisville that's got an office here? Are they considered local? If their national headquarters is in Atlanta and their regional headquarters is in Louisville and they've got a branch office here, are they local? You know, so it depends on your definition of local.
specific section of the ordinance, the Code of Ordinances, that deals with purchasing local preferences. And it does provide, a definition of what a local business is. And it also provides for what kind of preference is to be given local business in, in both the competitive bidding and the competitive negotiation process.
We haven't had anybody, I think, apply for that. There's an application process involved in that, but I don't think we've had anybody. Not recently that I'm aware of.
So, I mean, they have to apply for that to get that sort of recognition in order to?
We've got an application process for that, yeah.
Are these local companies, I'm just shooting out questions, are they aware of that? Have we, any businesses that we've done work with in the past that we sent notification to them in order to receive those preferences?
We have mentioned that to a couple of the local engineering firms, and to the best of my knowledge, they have not pursued it, that I'm aware of.
We've used that provision twice within the past year, one on a product and one on a service, to give that preference to local businesses. And in both cases, we had to make them aware that it did exist, and just said, if you want to apply for this, to take that
it's 5% variance.
Yes,
Yeah,
5%. And both of them, in our case, did.
To add to that, one of the reasons that we put that ordinance in place a few years back was primarily also for vehicles that we were purchasing. Local auto dealers were feeling like they were getting left out of the loop, and then we also applied it to office supplies as well. And that was the impetus that we talked about engineering firms and architectural firms that were local here. We're thinking if they have an office here and they're providing jobs in the Frankfort community, we consider that to be local.
Any other questions, concerns, clarifications? Thank you. Okay, well, this next item is probably going to take a minute. That was a joke. Garbage. Yeah. Garbage issues are up. I have a few concerns here. We want to bring it over to you guys.
Well, Mr. Gray here, I'm sure he said that Ms. Stevens helped anyone else with garbage.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Let's move on to ordinances. I think that's.
Stay here.
Sure. Sure, and then we can go into the wee hours talking trash.
Unless they want to stay. Okay.
So the idea behind this Code of Ordinances review, it's not to get into any lengthy discussions of any particular ordinances right now. It's to kind of throw a bunch of spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. So we're asking folks if they have any ordinances they would like to see reviewed, amended, added, or deleted. Just bring those up, put them on the table, and after we collect a number of suggestions, we're prepared to do it. Then we can just tally through real quick and see what has enough majority interest to warrant deeper discussion down the line.
But this is just a pre-qualifying kind of thing to
Sure.
qualify what we would discuss in depth in the future, correct?
Yes.
Versus discussing it in depth now with others.
Sure, that's absolutely correct. Some folks might want to make widgets illegal. Widgets being a fictional product. Some folks might want to make widgets illegal. Some folks might not. If we've got 3 folks who want to do it, then we can discuss further. If we don't, then we don't need to waste any time on it. So in that spirit, get this up where the cameras can get. I guess we'll just start taking suggestions. I'll just toss them up on the board and paste them behind us, and we open this up for commissioners and staff, and we receive some citizen suggestions as well. We'll note. Do you guys wanna go first, or do we wanna hear from staff first if they have anything?
I would say, if I can, I would say Ms. Stevens and Mr. Gray, if they had anything, we can start with them.
Sure. Throw them out.
I do.
Yep.
I don't know if this calls for a new ordinance or an amendment to an ordinance, but as far as citizens who are appointed to boards and commissions, just recently there was a person that served on 4 separate boards and commissions at the same time, and it seems to me that there's enough talent in and around Frankfort and people that are interested in serving on boards. I'd like for you all to consider limiting one person to one position at any one time. It just seems to me that having a person on more than one board just leads to conflicts and problems.
If I can ask a follow-up question, Mr. Gray, if I may.
Yeah.
Would that suggestion go as far as to say that there would be limits on the amount of terms that a person could serve on the board?
No, not necessarily.
So just a limitation on
The number of boards.
number of boards at the same time,
Yeah.
correct? Not over a career or something.
That's right.
Noted. Try to whip through these.
And the other, I sent you all a memo on, I think that there's a noise problem downtown that needs to be addressed. And my suggestion is that the ordinance that allows entertainment establishments to stay open until 2 a.m. be amended to have closing time at 12 midnight. As I said in my email, our parents told us that nothing good happens after 12 o'clock, and I think what goes on in downtown after 12 o'clock is probably evidence of that.
The police department will agree with
Okay, so close entertainment establishments at
12 midnight.
midnight. Yeah.
Gravel.
Yeah. In relation to parking.
If gravel surface is considered a hard surface, and it might come up during any stormwater utility discussions, or for parking on the street, whether that's a hard surface parking, it comes up a lot. It's kind of treated in a gray area right now, so we may want to think about at some point define what is gravel. What's a gravel? Is it a hard surface, impervious, pervious, parking, no parking?
Okay.
We kind of go back and forth on.
And to clarify the existing rule, as of right now, for example, it's illegal for somebody to park on grass. They can park on pavement, or they can lay down gravel and park on this.
So it's not hard surface, as I understand, it's not defined.
You can't add gravel, only replace existing.
Okay, I see.
But do we want to allow gravel parking lots? Whether it's in the right of way or on top of property?
The bill says gravel is gray.
Define gravel. Okay, that's a good one.
But Lexington has really struggled with gravel,
driveways, gravel, parking lots, as it relates to pervious or impervious. It's been a real sticking point here.
That's understandable. What else do we have?
Alarm ordinance.
As in car alarm?
No, as in burglar alarms, robbery alarms, false alarms.
Okay. Do we have any ordinances on the book?
We do not.
Okay. Okay.
And if we get into that,
fire alarms.
we would want to look at possible fire alarm ordinances also, false alarms.
Firehouse and fire, okay. And just to get us an idea of what this refers to, I mean, what kind of changes are you suggesting?
We currently, should I come up to the microphone?
Yes. It'd be easier on Ramona.
I won't hear a thing otherwise.
Everybody come on, if you have something real bad.
We currently answer between 1,600 and 2,000 alarm calls a year. Whether it's from businesses or residential alarms, requiring generally 2 officers per call. 99% of those alarms are false alarms.
Sure.
The alarms are there for a good reason. Most of our alarms are numerous repeat offenders, people who have alarms. They either have personnel that don't know how to use the alarms. Some are weather related. There are several types of ordinances that can be done, whether the city licenses a person who installs an alarm, or if you just have too many false alarms, then you're charged for the number of, beyond a set number. But that is quite a drain on emergency personnel answering false alarms, when a little education on how a person could use their alarm. Now, this would be a little hammer to get them to learn how to use their alarm system and do it in a responsible manner.
Noted. Thanks, Chief. Anything else?
Gas drive-offs. Prepaid gasoline pumps. Bowling Green enacted an ordinance. Another one of the types of calls that we have are gas drive-offs. We'll rip and run and go and take a report at a gas station where they've allowed somebody to pump a full tank of gas and drive away. Some of the new pumps are preventing that with credit cards, the debit card use at the pump. But we looked into this a couple of years ago. Most of the businesses that we contacted were okay with that. It saves them money.
With requiring, the city ordinance requires prepay for gas.
Prepay for gasoline.
Okay.
We don't have gas in the place where I didn't have to prepay, in a long time.
Well, there are still places here in town.
Anything else?
Yes, sir. Civil service. We were talking about Chapter 40 stuff. But since we're throwing things on the wall, discussions, one of the things that we don't have, well, with police officer professional standards, where you go to the academy, you get a license, you can be a police officer any place. Otherwise, you hire someone off the street, you have to send them to the academy. If we take applications from those people, a certified officer has to go through the same process that any other person would go through to get a job. The same testing, the same interview, that type of thing. We were thinking about lateral, some sort of lateral or coexisting list with the civil service list for new applicants. Somewhere where we could examine candidates who already have the training, already have experience, but could be considered for positions in the police department. So I would call it a lateral hiring list within civil service. I've discussed this with Randy and with individual members of the Civil Service Board, and I think this is something that we can do in some shape or form. We don't want to go outside of civil service. We want to do it with their blessing, but we also want a mechanism where, say, an officer moves to our area from another part of the state and would like to apply for a job, if we could have some sort of rotating list, because since it is a licensed position, you could hire them and plug them in.
Understood. What else you got?
Wellness, we were talking about the wellness. Of course, with us, it's a city ordinance or an order, I can't remember which. But we give our employees 2.5 hours a week off in order to maintain their wellness. Now, with that brings the workers' comp thing. Sometimes they get injured. They're either doing fitness challenges or just working out. Those things happen. But the 2.5 hours a week for our employees is a benefit of about $250,000. But what has happened now that we're getting a little short-handed, we have to give those people the 2.5 hours off a week. So what we would like to do, and perhaps this could be done under the umbrella of the city's wellness program, it's got to bring us all under one big umbrella, but consider maybe giving the employees who participate in a wellness program time off. If you participate in this program, you get an extra 2 weeks or whatever it is, so that it's time that they can use. it's time that the employee can schedule off, that a supervisor doesn't have to schedule during that work week where that employee can't be there, and perhaps, you know, if it's shorthanded, we have to bring somebody else in to cover that. Robbing Peter to pay Paul, when this time can be scheduled better, because it has to be taken off with the pay period.
So I essentially offer comp time for wellness.
That's true, that's true. Some sort of comp time, and it couldn't be 2.5 hours a week, just because that's a lot of time away from work. Of course, you know, our circumstances are a little different when we did the ordinance. Let's see. Going back to the code enforcement, all I want to encourage is that whatever code enforcement that is done, you know, code enforcement is an important part of crime prevention. The descriptions of the Wachita Trail and the apartments that these folks gave you is a perfect example of the environment dictating or giving rise to crime problems.
Sure.
You know, if you have places that are boarded up, they need to be taken care of one way or the other. I don't have a dog in that fight, but that's what happens when properties run down.
Sure.
You get those type of problems. We're devoting a lot of time to those types of things. So, you know, our robust code enforcement and planning and zoning regulations would help in crime prevention. So, you know, just a little vote of confidence for Gary. And then one other thing was the, and maybe Wally can talk about it, under the fire marshal, the certificate of occupancies. We've had situations come up where people will open a business or start running a type of business, and particularly it's these party areas where someone will rent a space, run a party, they don't have a business license, they don't have a certificate of occupancy, they've not had the first inspection, and you know, I go back to the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire, places like that where you get a lot of people in an area, you know. Obviously it's unsafe, but it's very difficult for the police department to go and say you can't run this, because it's, I think it's been said before, it's kind of an injunctive process. You know, the judge has to, you know, I mean, we can't, it's more of a civil thing than a criminal thing. You know, and what we're doing is we're saying if you don't have a certificate of occupancy, you don't have any reason to be here, therefore you're trespassing. You know, maybe we need to look at that as you know, something we can add that the police department can do in order to keep these places shut down.
So how would you characterize that in terms of the suggested ordinance?
Well, I don't know. We've sort of talked about this before with the Green Plaza deal. How would you?
Ours, it's reception hall and assembly. We changed the rules that you have to get a conditional use permit if you're within 500 feet of a house, single-family residence. But what the chief is saying is he doesn't have any teeth in his ordinance to keep the people from having the party when they don't come and talk to Gary and get the permits. We need to be able to keep them the door shut until they go through the process. Not saying they can't go through a process, but they need to have some teeth to stop it when the party is starting or getting started, and to keep them from having them over and over. It went 2 months at Brighton Park before the owner stepped in, and then workers of that function now is the tenant and is doing the same thing all over.
Give me an example of a proposed ordinance that would give you those teeth.
2 things. One is, now this, I'd call it reception hall. That's what I would call the category.
Okay.
Because that'll give us an easy way to think about it. One is, what you would do is you would have to make the owner of the property have some skin in the game, some responsibility to make sure that the people that he's renting to are complying with the applicable rules and regulations. And then 2 is require the people that are getting an itinerant or temporary license for to operate a reception hall, perhaps have a bonding requirement, so that if they have one of these parties that bring hundreds of people. And
From
always
out of
end up
town.
with, and by the end of the night, it's always 5 or 6 policemen as well. But have a bond that's forfeited in the event that, you know, they don't comply with applicable rules, because, you know, if it's a $1,000 or $2,500 bond, then of course, you know, you have to weigh whether it's worth having one of these big parties and losing your bond.
And a higher business license fee application.
And with the only
Specifically for reception halls?
And the only real condition
Yes.
in the code right now is the 500-foot restriction.
Distance, right. No hours of limitations.
Yeah, we need hours defined, operating hours. Right now, they could theoretically go till 2 a.m., or if they get a special use, conditional use, it could go even longer.
Actually, it's the other way around. They can go all night long unless they go through my process.
Right.
And then we recommend 2 a.m. shut off as a condition, but it's not in the book that way.
So I've got most of that, but to clarify, am I hearing that currently the property owner has zero liability or responsibility?
Right.
Pretty much.
The property owner can rent it to somebody, and that somebody decides to use that space, or sublet it to somebody else to use that space for a gathering. And, you know, you have several layers of people there who claim to have permission to do it, but none are really legal.
Just a brief history. Every year for the past several years, we have at least one, sometimes more of these establishments that try to operate during the KSU. And it creates problems for the police department, it creates problems for us. I spent most of the day and up until 12:30 Saturday night dealing with one that was totally illegal, to the point where we had to get overtime police officers involved and call that paddy wagon, and it was a big mess. And all because they didn't follow the rules.
They actually got a conditional use permit approved, but it was conditional, and they've never done any of their conditions to satisfy it.
Right.
And the difficulty is, if you have a gathering, they sold 700 tickets to this. Had they allowed 700 people in there, we could not have shut it down. So stopping it before it got started was our best way of handling this.
It worked out well, but we could have had big problems.
So we've got 4 suggested fixes for that. Any others?
In the ideal world, I'd like to see them outlaw altogether, but I don't know if we can do that.
Send them to Eagle Lake.
What about job security?
Putting everything on the list, I mean, you know, somebody might not have any support, but we'll put them on the list. Okay.
Ban the presence of alcohol on any reception hall.
Yes.
They don't sell it, but you can bring your own.
Oh,
They have
okay.
an ordinance that you don't bring your own.
Or you went
But
through-
the downside is, I mean, there are weddings that people do have
You had to go
Right.
through-
quality gatherings, but where do they go if we have an outright ban?
But people don't generally charge admission to the wedding either.
And if the state has 2 a.m.
Well, I don't know.
Nothing good happens after midnight at the wedding, right?
What else we got?
That's all I have.
If I'm going to comment on the, I'm sorry to bump you here.
No.
Quick, since I'm sitting here, quick comment on the alarm fee possibilities. Yeah. The only downside of that is it can be an administrative nightmare to track who had how many false alarms during X period of time, 6 months or whatever. So that's something that's got to be considered and given some thorough thought to if we get into that. I've intentionally avoided getting into that, primarily because I don't think it would generate that much revenue for us in the big picture. But it would be some revenue, and it may cut down false alarms in that we would hold people more responsible for proper maintenance and proper usage, etc. The only other thing I was going to add was fireworks.
Hey, that's mine.
I had, it's been on my list to bring this to y'all and put an ordinance prior to this coming New Year's Eve. I don't know if there's time to do that or not, but before I put any work into it, I guess, doing what you're doing now, I'd like to know am I wasting my time?
There's time if there's a political will.
It takes
Plenty of time.
It's gonna take some time to draft it, we're talking about 2 months to adopt it, so, and I'm good with that, we can work on it,
But I assume you're talking about doing something equivalent to reimposing the limitations that the state lifted on the local level.
either reimposing it and go back to those restrictions that we had before, which we have the authority to do under the statute.
Sure.
Or do as some places have done and just ban them altogether. Now, what I would like to say is, whatever restrictions the city of Frankfort places on it, whether it's permitting fee increases, total restriction, hours of operation, whatever, I think we need to get the county on board, because it's going to be futile for us to say, you can't sell them in the city of Frankfort, when all we got to do is go across the line with the county and buy them and then bring them back into Frankfort to use them. I've already coordinated this thought with the county fire chief, and he's on board. He'd like to see them highly restricted also. So if there's support from the commission, my next step is going to be to talk to the county judge and the sheriff and see if we can all get on the same page.
Okay. Anything else? Gary has some?
Yes. First question, do you want to know ones that we already are working on, or do you want ones that we are like?
This is to figure out if there's anything we want.
Direction to do,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Then the property maintenance code is based on the International Code Council's book. So the last time we rewrote it based on that was in 2009. The 2012 is now available. Do you want us to compare the 2012 property international code to our property maintenance code to see what changes need to be done, or recommendations?
I'll go ahead and say sure, but for now,
Update property maintenance code for ICC 2012 is the thing.
Per what?
For the ICC, International Code
ICC.
Council, 2012. Adopt an ordinance requiring the registration of foreclosures. We mentioned it, we haven't done any research. I haven't done any research on it. Rob's done some looking into it. I think maybe a draft from KLC. But I haven't done anything. Is it a priority? You want me to elevate it? Incentives for abandoned properties that are in historic districts. I do have suggestions. And that is incentives to rehab, not anything else.
That sounds good. Okay.
And then incentives for development within the Riverfront redevelopment plan area and the Home Street redevelopment plan area.
What was that again?
Create incentives for redevelopment within the Riverfront redevelopment plan and the Home Street redevelopment plan.
Okay, so incent Riverfront and Home Street development.
Yep.
Okay.
The city has a streetscape committee, maybe a streetscape board.
Still, is it active?
On the books.
Right.
Been met in 4 years.
Sure.
I think y'all look at that. I think it's a valid committee if it's given some direction or told, yeah, we want you, or you should take them off the books. Either way.
On the Frank Streetscape Committee.
And then you also have a redevelopment board or committee. It was established to help with the state's housing authority back in 96, 97. Never met again, but it's still, there's still funds out there. And if someone wanted to do a tax increment to TIP, which is supposed to come up with a determination of blight, it's supposed to go to that committee.
Okay.
So, I have no idea who it was on that. Adult entertainment, do we want to address it like the county has addressed it? Do we want to leave it based on solely KRS, because otherwise it's not addressed, other than public decency?
You mean like?
Pretty liberal, I mean.
You mean like strip clubs?
Yeah.
Adult entertainment, okay.
far we've been rolling, in my opinion.
I'm not aware of anything in town.
That's correct.
They rent for the weekend.
Reception hall. We've had some very close. Beauty salons, barber shops are not allowed as a home occupation, period. Do we want to keep it that way, or do we want to change it? I've had a lot of phone calls on this. I don't have any good answers, but in a lot of cities I work for had the same rule. But I don't get it. But it's just a rule. I don't know anything about it. And then 4-day work weeks. We've been doing it for 2 years as a pilot. I consider it, I guess, real. Otherwise, don't take away the pilot, please.
We've got several more departments.
Doing the pilot. So we might want to work on making it real, maybe.
Okay.
I guess I will say a nuisance board. It's going to be suggested, actually I put it as a suggestion in my last report to you all.
Right.
But that, we'll need more discussion on that.
Okay.
And then lastly is I have a new handout for you on that property maintenance code updates. I met with Wendy from Heritage Council. She's a CLG coordinator. We spent 2 hours going over the draft and working out a couple tweaks. So I made changes to that. If you would like.
That's something, that's something that's
correct.
been
It's
in work for a
nothing
while.
on there.
Okay,
I forgot to tell you.
we'll get off this list, but thank you.
And that's it for now.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Well, of course, no, I know we've got our share. Then everybody else is good. Okay, what's on your mind, Kate?
I got a whole book,
Yeah.
whole book, and you want to rush me, but I've listened to you several times, so it's your turn.
No, please take your time.
Okay, the first one's just a typo, that's in the book. 33202 salary. It says that the city commissioner's annual pay is $9,600, which is on page 11. Then if you go to page 83, it will tell you that the city commissioner's annual salary is $14,643.20. Both are come out from 2011, so I just think that needs to be looked at.
Can you give me those numbers again, please?
Since that appears to be an error, can we just,
Well,
do we just want to go ahead and
do you want to
ask
look
staff
at
to address that?
ordinances and review as it says, or do you just want to go through a wish list?
No, that's fine, I just didn't know how to,
Because it said in the ordinance review.
okay.
I believe chapter 32 maybe refers to the KRS, and chapter 37 brought it up to date because the KRS says you can do COLAs or whatever. I remember talking about that when we rewrote chapter 37. Rob may have
So you're looking at 3202.
3202,
Versus,
and then the other one is 3733.
3202 and 3733. Okay.
I'd say one of them cites the KRS, which was probably indexed back in the 90s or whenever they passed the state statute that limited those salaries. And it's probably never been updated. And personnel, when we wrote chapter 37, I believe I recall we went ahead and built in the inflationary allowances that were granted under that state law to bring it more up to date.
83, it's the same KRS with the,
Yeah, I think one of them has got the COLAs built in, the other one doesn't. And I think the concern was if somebody looked at chapter 37 and they saw the $9,000 number, that's not what we paid.
Sure.
So it'd almost be like providing false information if you put the old number out there. So, and I don't know, I really don't want to speak to chapter 32 because I don't know. Because it's not it's more of maybe a legal question. 37 is the one I worked on now.
Right, and I believe the 9600 is what the 1464320 is based upon, once you apply all of the COLAs that have occurred since that time.
Okay.
So we'll look at it to see whether we should leave it as is, just because that gives you the historical perspective versus going ahead and making them both consistent.
Mm-hmm. Or at least make another reference.
Right. I can answer that, there's a constitutional maximum on what city and county officials can be paid, and so a lot of times it might reference that constitutional maximum, the Kentucky Constitution. And there was a case in the Spunk versus Milliken was the case, and they applied the rubber dollar theory, where they take the constitutional maximum and bring it into current year dollars, is what that's based on. So I believe that's probably how this ordinance was constructed as well.
Well, that's a good point, Katie.
The next one I want to bring up has to do with if you were non-mobile, confined to a wheelchair, and you were injured, you would call the ambulance to come pick you up, of which the ambulance will charge you $1,100. I have a person in town who actually does bills for over $7,000 for to be traveled from Ashwood Place to Dr. Lingland's office, which is at the hospital less than 1 mile. Just wondering if there's any support to possibly adding an option for people who are non-ambulatory, who also can't drive, who also need a service. I don't know if the handicap bus can always come pick them up.
Bus system should be you call them schedule for a bus system.
We have a demand response that does that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't go
Does
outside
it
the
need
city
48
limits.
hours notice or 24-hour notice?
Well, no, if that was the case.
We can go outside the city limits, our city buses.
Okay.
That is the city, isn't that, or Ashwood Place is county and the hospital city? That's the only city.
Ashwood.
No, they're both
City.
City.
But Cardinal Lane, I think we can go a mile outside of city limits.
Mhm.
And if special, request is made.
Mhm. Now, if the person needs, say for instance, you've had a stroke or you're paraplegic, you have no function of your legs or even all 4 of your extremities. You're living in an apartment by yourself, you fall on the floor. You probably only have a lipo on your neck. Who does that call? If you can get to it.
Closest back.
Right. Of which dispatch would come. Those people would have to come in, help pick them up off the floor. And if they needed any other services, they would have to be driven. I'm just trying to think of an alternative versus the cost, because the Medicare doesn't always charge. And we spoke about this, but not everyone has.
Right. If we do not transport, there is no charge, and we get calls daily.
Mhm.
Person is fallen, they're not injured, they just need help getting back in bed or help getting up or out of the yard back into their house, whatever. We don't transport by law, there is no charge, and that's just a public service that we provide. If we transport them, no matter what, the minimum level of care that we, would require that $1,000 fee to be able to transport, as set by, currently as set by ordinance.
I think transportation.
I've got provide cheaper alternative to emergency transport. Is that?
Do you think there's any way we could? I guess the first question is, see if the city, is there any way the city could provide such a service?
City does. The paratransit service.
But do you need 24-hour service for that? Do you need to call a day in advance?
Yes.
So rather than provide, maybe you're suggesting that we improve the cheaper alternative to emergency transport.
But your service is for ambulatory people, right?
Wheelchairs, demand response,
Yeah.
someone that can't physically walk to a bus stop is eligible.
Wheelchair, but not someone has to go by stretcher, you can't do that.
You can.
That's
No, not stretcher.
So like the person you're referring to, is that a stretcher requirement, or is she wheelchair, or what?
I'm sure if maybe they fell on their chair, they may need a stretcher, and who knows, what if she fell on her head and, or he.
Hey, but I thought I understood you saying she needs help getting up, but then she still has to go to the hospital to get checked out?
Or I don't know everything that she does. All I have is bill statements from the city saying that she goes less than 1 mile and $753.40 is what she has to pay out of her pocket.
And is she Medicare?
Medicare,
And does she have private insurance?
I'm not sure about that. But what goes for one, sometimes, we get an elderly population.
Right. There are so many variables that come into play here.
Right.
If she has Medicare only and has no private insurance, and it is determined that she's on a fixed income, unable to pay the difference, it'll be written off. So we only get what Medicare pays. If she has private insurance, then that's billed after Medicare. And then,
But if she was sick with the flu, vomiting, any other thing that may come with the flu, she would have to call the city for the cities to pick them up a day later to go to the doctor. Is that correct?
right, so that's a non-emergency transportation run. If it's an
Well, it might be an
emergency.
emergency, but if you have diarrhea and you can't get up.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you're sick and you need immediate medical attention,
She calls you.
then he's out,
Right.
She has to call an ambulance.
Right.
He doesn't do anything with medical
And there's
attention.
no alternative to the cost.
As it's written right now,
Right.
no. But the commission wants to look at plugging in a separate waiver, so to speak. That's certainly possible. And we'd have to get our billing company to make sure that we comply with those rules with Medicare, and it will require an ordinance change, et cetera.
Right, and that's an issue that has just arisen where someone visited me and owes a substantial amount of ambulance fees to the city. So I forwarded, I drafted a letter, forwarded it to the chief as their policy to discount this. Because this gentleman's wife was at Bradford Square and had several trips to the hospital, some emergency, some non-emergency, and ran up
$7,000 or $8,000.
$7,000 or $8,000 in ambulance fees. And she's passed away, of course, he doesn't have the funds to pay it. So right now, we don't have the mechanism to provide a discount unless the commission wanted to do it on a case-by-case basis, which would be difficult to administer.
Right.
It'd be hard to argue in court if we ever got sued.
And I'm not sure what the statutory requirements are, but according to the billing company, there are some statutory requirements that would prohibit us from routinely discounting the bill. Are you familiar with that at all? That was what we meant. I thought it was simply about our ordinance, but there may be some statutory under the, or not statutory, legislative regulations. They may be in that, and KB, so I have to look into that.
Well, is it fair, Katie, to characterize your suggestion as a cheaper alternative to emergency transport or establishing some kind of hardship waiver or reduction?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think that's great. Great, thanks. Thanks. This is just a dispatch one that still says the fire chief is in charge, the police is in charge of our dispatch, correct? That came out in February.
Fred, is that still the case?
In chapter 40.
That is correct.
Chapter 40, so that needs to be changed somehow, that the police chief is in charge of the dispatch instead of the fire department.
That was an order by the city commission in 1991. I could provide you a copy of that.
Or maybe we just need to maybe add an addendum to the order or something?
Yeah, I mean, it's an ordinance, I mean,
What does the ordinance say?
The Board of Commissioners hereby authorizes the fire chief and/or his duly authorized representatives to dispatch the fire department, including persons of equipment that dispatch does not seriously deplete the fire and/or emergency medical resource for the city.
That's under the old system when.
When they used to have their own dispatch.
Dispatch in the fire station. That's
So-
a separate ordinance. That doesn't give supervisory authority to the fire chief for dispatch. That's just talking about the fire department dispatching their own units.
Well, what that specifically is referring to is mutual aid requests. Is not, not who's in charge of dispatch.
Well, request by municipality or the government agency.
Right.
Mutual aid.
Right.
Okay,
That gives me the authority to authorize them to go help with sales should they call us.
okay. Thank you.
Are you satisfied with that, Commissioner?
Commissioner? I guess trash collection of private businesses.
Simple enough, okay.
And another one possibly allowing business owners a right to vote, who may not live in the city, but may have a voice in the city by paying city taxes.
I don't think that we constitutionally can franchise somebody who like to go there.
There's a requirement that residency requirement. I think the statute in 117, I think it is. But you can double check.
I can still put it on the list if you want to.
But there's a residency requirement.
Removal of dead animals, I don't know if this one's always done, someone brought it to our attention at a previous meeting. But it also says that no more for 10 hours after the death of an animal should should still be lying on the street. I don't know how much we enforce that.
I don't know how you could determine that. I mean, the stopwatch on it.
Tag it, piece of it.
Get the chalk, you know.
What's the penalty if you don't? Do you stop somebody?
It says that you'll be fined, but it doesn't say how much. It's just penalty C $92.99.
I think there's a requirement, if someone hits an animal, that person is responsible for calling for medical attention and or if it's dead, removing it, and then just contacting the owner. Without looking at it.
I'm just seeing some quick
You
response.
talking about a domestic animal or?
We don't, any of them.
So presumably it's a livestock.
If the guy says his share of this supposed to be notified, there's a statute on that, that law got changed not long ago, and there's a fee for the sheriff to the livestock.
That's still Rain Man, just like Rain Man.
That happens after a wreck.
Couple of years ago, they did that, but I don't remember.
Is there, I don't know how to characterize this, Katie, is there,
Well, the citizen had brought it up in a prior meeting, I just figured I'd bring it up for them since I'm not here. They talked about that animal being on the street right before Expo, I believe, that was there for like 2 days on Littleton Boulevard.
so city animal removal, is that?
The city animals, or,
That was in our highway, so, I mean, that would be our responsibility, not necessarily an ordinance, but for us to pick that up.
State road.
Like, because that was on Wilkinson Boulevard.
Maybe we could look at a provision or something that if the state is incapacitated for some reason, whether it be, you know, a weekend or out of hours, that the city would be taking responsibility for that. And there might be something that, I don't know,
the state to come in and clean it up.
the state probably won't pay us.
Is that, you just tell me what you want me to put on here, Katie, but I'm I'm not clear if you want this, if you're suggesting that the city take more responsibility, or that, private citizens take more responsibility, or that we just revisit the ordinance.
Maybe just revisit.
Okay. Revisit dead animal ordinance. Got it.
Almost there. General provisions when it comes to business regulations. I take personal offense to 11117 calling something a massage parlor. It's a very old term. It also has a negative connotation for someone who is a licensed professional.
What section was that?
11117.
1117. Okay.
And then the other thing I have with the business regulations, that there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to what people have to pay. For instance, if I were to open a massage parlor, I would pay $25 for an annual license fee. But if I wanted to do an amusement athletic contest, something like that, it would be $50 per show or $100 per year. A fortune teller, if they came into town, do you know that they have to pay an annual license fee of $1,500?
It's a taker.
You knew that, didn't you? Or you have to pay $25 per pool and billiard table. It just seems that if we could have a better flow of what a business would have to pay in town, maybe more of a standard form versus kind of hit or miss all over the place. I mean, to me, a fortune teller setting up paying $1,500, but if I were to set up things for the expo, I'd only have to pay $50 and like pay for that, you know?
Okay.
Set it onto the fortune teller.
So I've got
More standard rates.
So I've got addressed discrepancies in licensing fees. I can, my impression of the fortune teller fee, for example, because lots of cities have that, is that the purpose of that is to discourage fortune telling, for example.
Because they are gypsies. I mean, if I, if you want to deal firearms, it's only $25.
To build them?
If I wanted to deal on firearms, then I would only have to charge $25 annual fee. But if I wanted to deal you some junk, I'd have to pay you $50.
Okay, that's a good one.
Junk, not meaning drugs, right?
Hopefully
Not that.
No, that licensing fee is like, I think, like $100.
The street pharmacy. There's a fee if you're gonna, and this is not a lie, it's a prosecution tool for dealing marijuana. It's a prosecution tool. If people get arrested for selling this piece of marijuana, they can also get slapped with a fine. Charles Jefferson, what's that? It's for real. They have to find the county clerk's office.
Oh, for the tax?
It's true.
For the.
I mean, unless they've gotten a business license and are paying taxes.
Right, that's correct.
It's for real.
If anybody's doing that, then shame on our enforcement mechanism.
It's for real.
We grant one marijuana business license in the city.
I actually had something different in mind than Mr. Gray, which is keeping the hours at 2 versus midnight.
Are the hours currently set at 2?
The hours currently are set. Do you want to do this one, Bill? Top of your head?
Well, I know on Sunday night, which is actually Monday, they changed, it's different. Or Saturday. Saturday night. For Sunday morning, it's different.
Saturday for Sunday. Yeah, that's 2 o'clock, and the other one is 1 a.m., I believe.
2 o'clock till 6 a.m. and then Sunday between the hours of 1 and 6.
So for the sake of discussion, I'll put maintain business hours. Does anybody want to talk about extending them?
Yes. Well, there's another clause that goes with it, which is with the restaurants. That Sunday's there from 1 to 10.
maintain business hours for entertainment and restaurants? Or are you suggesting extending hours for?
Should they be on the same page? Should they?
Well, I can make them separate, sure. Maintain business hours. I'll just separate them out. Okay.
Oh, the outdoor cafe. Is that, are those only for downtown businesses, or does that include? Well,
We do need to look
Applebee's,
at that.
anyone like that sets up an outdoor cafe? Do they have to do the same license fee, or is it just for?
So we've expanded it for, if it's a private sidewalk, yes, or right of way. But there needs to be, I forgot that one, I have some suggestions, changes to that. Currently, you have to have a restaurant and or a bar to be able to get this license. If you have a retail establishment, an office business, you can't sublease your right to that license, which would add value to that rentable space if you had an office and you could sublease it out to someone who wasn't physically on the mall to come on down to the mall, like the Dragon. The Dragon wants to have a hot dog hamburger stand. They can't put it on the mall. They can put it from their door, but they can't put it from the mall. Should a business owner who has leased that space be able to offer it to someone else downtown? That's a question. Otherwise, yes, we give that permit out on Broadway and on Main Street, but nowhere else. No one else has ever passed, or no one else has ever been found in violation of that. And it's different from like Larry's Pit. He used to drive his truck around, or the Guppy's Coffee Shop. That's considered an itinerant merchant. And they're not put on public property, they're put on private property. It only applies when you're on public property. And you own a restaurant or a bar, eating establishment.
But that's a food truck, right?
Food truck, you can, that's an itinerant business license, not a cafe license.
2-hour park.
So I think that ought to be looked at. I think there's some, if you wanted to add the opportunity for business owners to add investment or make their rental space more valuable, do you allow more competition, or do you say the restaurants we got, and if you are a restaurant, great, you can sell it on the sidewalk, but if you're not, you can't come down and sell. And all rules are off during any city event, whether it's expos, summer concerts, anybody and their brother gets to do whatever they want, as long as DFI says it's okay. And that's a quasi-unwritten rule.
I'm at a loss as to how to characterize this.
St. Clair Mall business use expansion. I tag it, but however you all deem, if you deem it even worthy to make it a board. It's really a right-of-way encroachment permit.
It's my understanding that they also have to draw a map every time that they apply of what they're seating.
A site plan indicating that they're providing a minimum of a 4 or 5 foot wide path, open path. Where the table's going to be, where the grill's going to be. They have to have a pad under the grill if they have a grill.
Do they have to do that every year? Should they only have to do that if they change it?
Well, we ask for it every year because it rarely ever stays the way according to the site plan is anyway. But that way we have something to say, okay, look, you just said you were going to have the table over here, you didn't push the table over here, so we have to walk away. Between the building and the curb, not the 4 feet closest to the curb, is how it's actually written, for whatever reason. You have to have a 100,000 or $1 million liability insurance with the city listed on that insurance.
Right.
That's a good thing. Why it's April 1st through May 31st, or it's an March, April deadline.
pipe that's
It
sprayed.
expires during April and March. It would be helpful to me if it was either before May 1st, early day. It'd be better if it was like after or before, just because it's hard to enforce that one particular time period. I don't know why it's even that time period. It says like a calendar, January 1, everyone knows. It's a weird time of year to have a rule like that.
So right now, I've just got that listed as right-of-way encroachment permit, parentheses, sidewalk damage.
And it usually takes us a few months to get them to actually submit everything. And the penalty would be going to district court. So, we've had some trouble with that in the past.
130.08, throwing or depositing trash on public grounds. There was fight down at the old Capitol. I understand the old Capitol isn't city property, but it was on the sidewalk, of which one girl kicked another girl in the head. The police showed up. The police called the kids' parents, and both the kids were stayed on the property. Maybe you couldn't find them for fighting, but I'm pretty sure that there was some trash around the kids sitting on the wall. If you could maybe at least just cite them for something.
Did the officer see them deposit the trash?
I'm not sure, but.
If he did not, he could not cite them.
Couldn't cite them? Even if the trash is surrounding the kids.
And it's just like the fight, if the officer didn't observe the fighting, unless there's a serious physical injury that leads to a felony, the officer couldn't take any particular action other than call their parents. And even then, even if it were a chargeable offense, the officer would have to call their parents to inform them that they were going to be citing them in court.
Okay.
Because they're juveniles. It's not a terrible scenario.
But an individual can file the charges in the county attorney's office if they witnessed it. If somebody witnessed it.
That's right, or the officer can, a court designated worker, if it's juveniles, the officer would take charges to the court designated worker. But they would just tell them, give them a date to appear in court. I don't know about this particular situation, I'm just talking in generalities, but if you have something specific about this situation you want me to look at, I'd be more happy to look it up and see what happens.
No, maybe it needs to go in front of the nuisance board.
Commissioner, can I ask one question on that? What if you have a witness who said, I saw them throw all that trash on the ground and reported that to the officer? You can't arrest based upon the witness's statement, even if they make a sworn statement.
Right. A violation, it'd be the same thing as if they said, I saw them speeding down my street, and the car's parked in their driveway. The officer didn't see him speeding. He can't cite him for speeding unless he observes it.
What's the difference? I mean, what if I see somebody robbing a bank, but the officer doesn't?
Well, of course, that's a felony.
Sure.
And then the officer can act based upon probable cause.
Okay.
You know, we have a bank alarm, we got people running around, got a guy that says he saw them, then the officer can take actions based on probable cause. But violations or misdemeanors committed outside the officer's presence, you know, the officer, with certain exceptions, you know, there's domestic violence, assault, you know, that kind of thing. Certain DUIs, that type of thing. There's a list of statutory exceptions to that, you know, you can't, the officer can't arrest or cite unless it's committed in their presence.
Same thing with illegal use of fireworks.
Yeah, I was going to say, fireworks another.
We don't see
And
them like
same
we
thing
do.
with noise regulations, right?
And in the past, the city struggled with, all these are ordinances, but some are lower violations, and these are higher violations. Part of maintenance code, I get that a lot, you know. Well, these are weeds, but this is a boarded building. It's the same violation, it's the same problem. But I I've been asked to treat it differently. You really can't read, need to write it that way.
Yeah, I'm pretty skeptical of selective enforcement. I think the code needs to say what we want it to say.
Right. Almost done. Ready?
Yes.
If a new subdivision were to be built in the city, I would like to see that every new subdivision be built with sidewalks.
It's in there.
Is it already
I think that's there, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Now, you can ask for waivers or modifications to the rules, but as long as it's 5 lots or more, yes, it's required.
Okay. If I were multiple, is the multiple boards up there?
Sure.
Mandated, and Commissioner Wilder, you brought this up with, I guess, with your wife's place up in West Lafayette, with the landlord mandated inspections every 2 years to upkeep rental property.
And a regular rental property inspection. Okay.
Go.
Still late?
Yes.
This is fun. I'm excited. Okay, who's next?
I'll go. I guess mine kind of not as much as other people. But I've got just two that I kind of like to throw up there. One is, I feel like one of the things I've struggled with since coming on the commission is the amount of time that I have to review a potential board appointment. And I know I don't have the experience, obviously, of being the mayor, but I really feel like that I would benefit from having, a resume in my hand 30 days prior to making the vote, which would give me time to, contact the person, ask them questions. Right now, I feel like that I get the resume a couple days before the meeting and then asked to really make a decision at that point. And I don't feel like that the setup enables me to make the best possible decision. I would certainly like to hear Mayor Brandon's comments on that, and if you, Commissioner Mayor, anything from you. Also, one of the things that I'm keeping up with.
Yeah.
Also, one of the other thing that I'm interested in is pursuing the idea of a human rights commission for the city of Frankfort, which will be a way to ensure that discrimination is not something that exists or that provides an outlet for those who feel that they have been discriminated against to review those situations.
And I've also, so I've got Human Rights Commission. I also tacked on Renters Bill of Rights because that was mentioned. Somebody brought that up at the beginning of the meeting.
Ms. Stevens has been advocating.
Sure.
Yes.
So we put it on the board, so it's on the board.
Am I allowed to speak?
If you have another suggestion, we can hear it.
Okay, this is sort of a suggestion. This is just what I want to say, so that I don't keep spinning my wheels. I just want to say that the concerns that I have had where I live have been, and I think the word I would have to look to be sure, the word used was unobserved. In other words, I made a report on January the 14th, 2010. All of the concerns that I had, inside, outside, laundry room, blah, 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 blah. The return response for 3/4 of the things that I listed was unobserved. Now, here's my point. There is no more reason for me to keep coming here, and I've been waiting for this day to when I felt it was appropriate. The new board's coming on, getting up to speed and all that. But these observations, that was false. The things that I cited are clear to the naked eye. Clear, what I wrote down. But it was written unobserved. So I thought, if I keep coming down here, that many of the things that I have spoken to, that the people would either be fined for having not done what the maintenance code said that they should do, which I don't think happened either. I'd have to do an open records request to find that out, but I don't think they were. In other words, it was ignored, in my opinion. That's my opinion. And so, as a result, since January, and the new board came on, and I'm not being critical here, because you've got a lot to do, but I don't feel that there's been any change, any movement. And it could be that you're good with it, you know what I mean? Or you don't have time, or there are not enough people down here complaining about the situation. But I see the situation that I have where I live, many places all around Frankfort, I see it all of the time, by bus, when I walk through the neighborhood, when I discuss this with others that are not very well off financially, they have the same concerns that I do, but they never really get addressed. And I don't know how you do that. I don't know if you have a forum, or if it's just that, but we cannot go on saying unobserved, because that's not true. It's not true. And that's important, that something that says it was unobserved, when it's clear to the naked eye, and you write down in writing, and dated incorrectly, but in writing nevertheless, unobserved on every single thing that you listed, with the exception of 2 or 3 items. So what I'm here to say is, could we really have a rights and responsibility brochure for people who are renting? This place I rent, it was advertised. I know, but it was advertised in the newspaper. So the public is not protected from this, is what I'm trying to tell you. We have no recourse that I'm aware of in Frankfort where we have any protection against the kinds of things that I have experienced.
And I think in terms of suggested ordinance changes, that's reflected in British Bill of Rights. So are you suggesting something different?
Oh, you're calling it the Bill of Rights, yeah, okay.
Is that?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
I guess what I'm saying though is that in my situation, would it just be best just to say, okay, let's wait until we do the Renters Bill of Rights? But I guess what I'm going back to is many of the items that I listed January the 14th, right. Not only was it written that they were unobserved, they've never been corrected. And I would wager, I'd have to do an open records request, which I will do, that the people I'm referring to were never fined. In other words, there was no consequence for the wrongdoing. And not only that, but to have the people right down there unobserved is just unconscionable, in my opinion. Because you're not only not fining them, but you are saying that the person who listed the infraction, that it doesn't exist, which is false. You're not even acknowledging that the problem exists. And I guess what I'm saying is, this is going on in many places in the city of Frankfort, and the public is not being protected. When I ran,
clarify before we move on with it, because we need to we're trying to keep the conversation, and we were welcoming broad input to keep the conversation on track.
No, I guess what I'm saying is that there's a best, and then I have one more question, and I promise I'm through. How will you address these sheets of paper? Now, this is a great exercise, but what are you going to do with it?
We'll get to that.
Okay. And what you get specifically on the Bill of Rights, what it is that you're going to do to promote that.
In regards to any of these, the deeper questions will have to be answered if and when we cross those bridges, but we'll get to that. For now, we're trying to compile the list. Do you have anything, Bill?
The only thing, I'll say some of those that the department has brought up were good.
Yeah.
I guess for me, I've kind of exhausted most of the changes that and envisioned we've kind of kept up with over time. But I know when you come on new, you're going to have a lot of things. One of the things I was being really opposed to years ago when we did the last big ordinance review, we made it. We took the law off the books where people could spit on the street and vote it out. put that back where you can't spend a stranger.
That was a joke. Okay.
I don't know. I think it's all clarified. Actually, I didn't know that. I didn't know that big of a thought, you know, it could be kind of, it was mainly that's the law that had been in place for people to that, because back in the day, the people, but we took a lot of old ordinances out of the books, but
Tuberculosis was spread that way. Well,
there's a lot, yeah. And I realize that's because of the proliferation of different diseases. Shut up,
Anything, Fred?
no, I think that's pretty comprehensive.
Okay, I'll toss out.
Covered everything I had on my mind.
I'll toss mine out as quick as I can just to get them on paper. Lexington, well, and a number of cities have ordinances allowing for poultry, as long as they don't make noise or cause smells. I'd like to consider adopting one of those ordinances ourselves. Poultry ordinance. Okay. This is purely symbolic, and that wouldn't require any commitment on our part. A number of cities are signing on to the Mayor's Alliance for Green Schools. That just signals support on a city's part to support things like safe routes to school. You know, to do the city's part in terms of providing safe routes to schools and kind of as much stuff we're already doing. But this is it's a purely symbolic gesture. It doesn't make any commitment, but I'd love to see us formally join that alliance. Let's see. I can provide a copy of this to the city clerk for distribution to the rest of the commission. But the Cooperative Extension Office provided me with some suggestions regarding public spaces used for gardening or community gardens, etc. Some of it involving standards like having trash receptacles on site, etc. But also some things considering giving allowances to use pretty broad allowances to use public property if it doesn't have any current utility for community gardens. A lot of stuff wouldn't have a very practical effect because it's stuff the city has informally been doing for a while anyway, but it's always good to get things in code. So I'll just say garden ordinance, public garden ordinance. Some of this has been touched on a little bit. I would really love to see us ease, and I don't know if we can make this decision unilaterally, but I would love to see us ease restrictions within residential neighborhoods on mixed uses. Allowing things like small retail, like as in corner markets in residential neighborhoods, or even home scale manufacturing, as in if somebody's like sewing clothes in a room in their house, or even, and this even ties in with stuff like beauty salons and barber shops, being allowed in residential neighborhoods, but actually opening up zoning for low-level mixed use. These restrictions on mixed use.
An ordinance on City Hall temperature.
Yeah, right? It's cold in here. Oh, which reminds this isn't an order. I was biking by here the other night after a late meeting. I was biking home around. It was after dark, and saw that all the lights were on in here. And I was like, oh, somebody forgot to turn the lights on. So I actually let myself in and went to turn out the lights and saw that there's tape over the lights saying, "Do not turn off." So I left them on, but I don't think we need to leave the lights on all night. If we have security concerns, we could surely get motion sensors or something that would still turn them on if somebody broke in. But that's not important. So I was just bringing that up.
Before we do that alarm ordinance.
Right. One citizen sent an email requesting that we establish specific ordinances regarding outdoor live entertainment. I think the reference is like to the fact that you can hear the dragon all over South Frankfort into the wee hours. We do have dragons. We got one down by the river.
It's Loch's.
I'd be happy to outlaw glass pack mufflers. I think I brought this up before. They're artificially loud mufflers. I'm just tossing anything on the list, whether even some. I mean, I don't even necessarily agree with all this other stuff, but I said that I would pass on anything that anybody gave to me. We currently have a curfew. It's illegal to be outside after a certain hour if you're under 18. I get the reasons for that, but it's pretty authoritarian. I'd be happy to abolish the curfew. I'd like to see the city obey. I like to formally require the city to obey its own laws regarding planning and zoning. So, for example, we built the public safety, our previous commission obviously, built the public safety building without having an adequate plan in place for parking. It would have been illegal for any private business to do the same thing, but we don't have to follow our own laws, so we did it, and then it ended up costing us an extra $1 million, to address the parking problem down the road. But I just think it's poor form for us to set rules for other folks that we don't have to obey ourselves. It's currently illegal, according to the letter of the law, it's currently illegal for your cat to go outside unless you have it on a leash. I don't think that law is enforceable or even respected by anybody. I've never seen anybody walking their cat on a leash.
I've tried with my cat, but he
Boy.
doesn't want to. Well, a friend of mine's neighbor does that.
Just as a philosophical note, Albert Einstein made a claim about unenforceable laws. He made the point that anytime a state creates laws that cannot be enforced and that are ignored by the public, that undermines respect for the very institution of laws in the first place anyway, and that those kinds of laws actually do more harm than good. But what did Einstein know? This was brought to us earlier. We had some folks come in earlier and complain about mothballs being used outside. That's technically a violation of federal laws. I mean, mothballs are essentially a regulated substance. You're not allowed to use them for anything other than their intended purpose. So you can't use them for yard care. When people use them for yard care, they contaminate the soil, they create health problems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's already technically illegal, but hard to enforce. But if we would just outlaw the local use of local use of mothballs outside, that would make it a lot easier to enforce that law. Some people think that putting mothballs in their yard actually discourages snakes. I don't think there's any evidence that that's true, but people do it anyway. I guess I'd like to see us have a conversation regarding our rules when it comes to parking on grass. To allow for the temporary parking, on grass. Right now, you're technically not allowed to park your car on grass. A tree fell on our house a few weeks ago, and we had a truck parked in the backyard for a day or two. Gathering up the limbs and everything, and dealing with that work project. Technically, that was probably illegal. But lots of folks have situations like that that require temporary parking on grass. And I know that we can choose to selectively not enforce stuff, but
Do it on Saturday.
right. Well, temporary parking on grass.
park in the grass there, so we-
I mean, I think the concern is that folks don't want to see cars on blocks in yards, or like permanent, permanent parking on grass. It is also illegal, to my understanding, to change your own oil in your own driveway. Any kind of, it's illegal to perform car, my understanding is it's illegal to perform car maintenance on your own property. So if you want to change your own oil, or theoretically even add windshield wiper fluid, you're breaking the law. That's pushing, the windshield wiper thing is pushing it in terms of interpretation, but you definitely aren't allowed to like change your own oil or anything like that.
Do you know what rules that is? Is that a property maintenance code, a city ordinance, or?
No, I don't know.
I think it is a city ordinance in the right of way.
Yeah.
Like having your car up on blocks and working. I believe that is a city ordinance, that you can't perform maintenance or repairs on your vehicle, like
Right.
swapping engines out. on the
But you're
street.
saying it just applies to the right of way?
Yeah.
Okay, well,
We can double check.
I'll leave it up here for now, but yeah, I'm happy to take that off the list if it just applies to the right of way.
Well, I'll give you a right of way and put a question mark. I believe it, take a little research there.
Great. Wait. Okay. Just got a couple more. Oh no, that's it. So we've got a whole list of these things. To my mind, there are three possible reactions to any of these. Some of these are relatively simple and don't require much more detail or information. Some of them, to make informed decisions, require a good deal more discussion, research, and information. And some of the folks might be opposed to just discussing any further outright. So I was thinking that we could just buzz through this and determine whether or not folks are interested in moving forward, opposed to moving forward, or interested in discussing it further, and just kind of see where things stand. And I'm sure we can take a lot of this up off the list and figure out what we need to discuss further, and what we can go ahead and direct staff to start working on. We don't, and of course we can discuss in depth anything that anybody wants to, but I would encourage, because we have a lot to get through, I would encourage relatively snap impressions, as in whether or not you are for it, against it, or think it warrants more discussion. And we'll just...
You want us to use emotions?
Paper, scissors.
Sure. Why don't we just call, why don't we just real quick call 3 rolls on each item? Opposed, for, against, and discuss. Is that fair? And we'll just see where we stand on things. In terms of limiting positions on board appointments. For?
I think we need to discuss it, because there could be some statutory provisions that we can't
3, 4.
change, but I don't know if that means.
Well, we can't act on any of this stuff.
Yeah, I think that
there's nothing we would say
we would say 4, I think we just need to clarify that means move to a discussion. You see what I'm saying?
You
Versus.
said he was going to do 3 things.
No, I guess maybe semantics do matter. I guess some things we would need more information on, flat out. Anything, we can't change any ordinances without ample discussion, ample time, etc.
Right, that's why I'm saying if we just simplify it to 2 to say yay or nay. If you say yay, because quite frankly, most of them, I'm going to want to solicit public feedback on.
Great.
So if it just moves it down the process so that we can say.
That's a great point.
Discuss that.
So the question is purely, do we want to discuss this further, or do we not want to discuss this further? And so we've got, I'm gonna tally.
Yeah.
So this has 4 tallies to discuss further, and I'm going to color code these. Green is discuss further, and blue is not. Any 2 and 2s, the mayor can, then we'll ask the mayor to weigh in on. Close entertainment establishments at midnight. In fact, we can just call one vote. We'll just call the 4s, right? Anybody want to discuss that further? Okay. Define gravel. I'm happy to define gravel. Establish some kind of alarm. Oh, okay, sorry. I mean, these aren't even formal roll calls, we just want to know for the sake of moving forward what has enough majority support to even work on. Alarm, establish some kind of alarm ordinances.
Yeah.
Okay. Should just write numbers. Require prepaid gasoline pumps. I'd be happy to discuss it, sure. Establish a lateral hiring list for the Civil Service Board. Happy to discuss. Provide comp time for wellness program participation. I think that's great. Okay, there was the reception call concept got broken down into 5 categories. One suggestion was we just outlaw reception calls outright. Not seeing any support for that.
You just add all of it to discussion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are all possible solutions.
They are, but some of them are mutually exclusive.
Or if we move to discussion phase, we would be able to.
Sure. Well, I'm happy to move forward on discussing reception halls. Yeah. Okay. And a lot of this stuff was suggested by staff. So without objection from the commission, I'd say that a lot of this stuff just constitutes a green light for staff to start, putting their documents and information together. In terms of fireworks, obviously we're going to discuss this again. I mean, we said we would at the beginning of the year. Do we want to keep this blanket or break this down into 3 as well? We've got reimposing some kind of restrictions, banning fireworks outright. There's also some discussion of increasing licensing fees.
I'd request to keep it blanket.
Just keep it blanket and discuss it further with it, right?
And possibly you can discuss with the county. Right?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, we want to do that.
I'll make a note of that. Discuss with the county. Okay. Gary requested that we update the property maintenance code for ICC 2012. I think that makes sense to me.
Sure.
Gary asked that we require registration of foreclosures.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
He suggested incentives to rehab abandoned historic properties.
Yes.
And to incent riverfront and home street developments. We have the streetscape committee on the books. So do we want to have a discussion about whether or not to reinvigorate or do away with that committee?
Away as your son.
Yeah. Ditto for redevelopment committee on books. Do we want to establish some kind of adult entertainment ordinances within the city?
I think it's good, but the problem is when cities do that, they usually get challenged by some of the folks on purpose. I don't know if it'll happen here. We talked about that a few years ago with the fear that some entertainment establishment would come in and try to change.
Kind of like cell tower ordinances, it does happen.
Do what?
Like cell tower ordinances, they'll challenge it once you.
I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it. It's just if we don't have a problem.
Maybe that's something we might want to be more reactive to should it become an issue. I mean, I don't know, rather than be
I'm a big person for being proactive, but I don't want to invite someone to come
No,
in
that's
here
the
and
point.
sue us.
That's the thing, we don't know. I mean,
Yeah, you don't want to, it's keep the hornet's nest there.
That's the only thing, I mean.
And I can remember when I was in Louisville, there was a lot of issues with that.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of issues with that, so.
I'll vote no to discuss it this point.
I agree, we might need to discuss it someday, but right now, if it's not fixed, or it's not broken. Well, this ties in with my suggestion that we allow small-scale mixed-use development in residential neighborhoods, but beauty salons and barbershop shops, allowing that in residential property. I'm all for it.
Yep.
Further discussion.
Okay.
Go further with 4-day work weeks. How do y'all feel about 4-day work weeks?
I'm for it.
All for it. Great. We're crossing that stuff off the list that I would have expected. Establish a nuisance board, or at least talk about it. All for it. The next one. This is.
Just through ordinance revision where the clerk can do that?
Yeah, I'm happy to go ahead and direct.
Yes, it was just that, that's more of a question that.
Sure. Because you're not talking about changing the law,
No,
just making the law provide more accurate information. I agree that we should do that, but I don't know if we even need to discuss that further. Is that?
It's just a possible conforming change.
But is that noted?
Is noted. I don't know what your notes say, so I'll.
This sounds like a healthy discussion. Establishing some or improving a cheaper alternative to emergency transport, or establishing some kind of formal hardship waiver or reduction.
One of the things I'd like to see when we do discuss it is to get a report as to how other cities who have similar programs to us do it, so that we can sort of a roadmap.
Just a quick history on that, if I could. The reason that was put into place is because there were people that were calling ambulances to transport them when they were having like stub toe or something like that.